Without further delay, I'd like to introduce our second presenter. Our second presenter is Rodrigo Gouvea. He's a professor of philosophy at the Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro, Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. From 2017 to 2018, he was an invited researcher at the Argentinian Society of Philosophical Analysis in Buenos Aires and at the Goethe University in Frankfurt. He's a doctor in philosophy he has a doctorate in philosophy from the University of Leipzig. His publications include On Collectively Assigning Features to Artifacts and Physicalism Without Identity. Professor Rodrigo Gouvea will be presenting a talk entitled Ecumenism About Beliefs. Rodrigo, it is an honor to have an age-old colleague and friend presenting, and I'm very looking forward to a talk. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Paulo, for your introduction. Thank you all for attending the fourth symposium of Mind, Cognition, and Phenomenology. As one of the organizers of this event, I would like to thank Professor Katja Krone and Professor Sören Overgaard for accepting our invitation. And as a speaker in this event, I would like to thank Paulo Taddei and Flávio Curvello for insisting that I should present a talk. Both of them have spoken in other symposia, and now it's my turn. As Paulo said, my talk is entitled Ecumenism About Beliefs. We all recognize a peculiar complexity of beliefs, even before doing philosophy. Beliefs have three main features. They represent states of affairs. They have practical relevance in guiding the course of our actions so that our desires can be satisfied. And beliefs are things that we become aware or conscious of under a specific phenomenal character, which philosophers have called the feeling of belief. These three features, each of these three features have been emphasized by different theories, metaphysical theories about the nature of beliefs. And these are representationalism, dispositionalism, and occurrentism. The goal of my talk is to offer an ecumenical perspective, according to which the three main theories about the nature of beliefs, and I repeat them, they are dispositionalism, occurrentism, and representationalism, are not only compatible, but also at least in part true. So all of them are at least in part true, according to my view. The plan of my presentation involves dividing it into two parts and adding some final remarks. The first part is concerned with the possibility of a philosophically relevant ambiguity of the term belief. I will start by pointing to the fact that some differences between kinds of believing can be based on different feelings of belief. And this is a view presented by Bertrand Russell. I'll then move on to the claim that differences between kinds of beliefs might correspond to deeper differences in their mental factors. And this is a view that stems from Ramsay. The second part deals with ecumenism about beliefs, in which I'll present my ecumenical view. In a summary, it will argue that some beliefs are dispositions, and these make dispositionalism to a certain extent true. Some beliefs, which can also be called judgments, are occurrent events, and these would make occurrentism at least in part true. And there will be also things that Ramsay called attitudes of believing, which can be described as sets of expectations, that will make representationalism to a certain extent true. First part, a philosophically relevant ambiguity of the term belief. Well, my starting point for the whole investigation was a claim made by Frank Ramsey in Facts and Propositions that the term belief is ambiguous. Such a claim that the term belief is ambiguous can be understood in different ways. There are different sources, possible sources of distinction among beliefs that can be pointed out. Some of these we can easily recognize before doing philosophy. All of us acknowledge that some beliefs are certainties while others are mere opinions. So there is a source of distinction among degrees of belief that can be presented in order to support the claim of the ambiguity of the term. We also recognize that there are some different kinds of contents amongst our beliefs. Some beliefs are about necessary truths. Consider, for example, mathematical beliefs, while others are about matters of fact. There are also moral beliefs and aesthetical beliefs and things like that. So there is a relevant, not a relevant, but a difference between kinds of contents that may be the object of these beliefs. But there is another way, which I think it's even more philosophically interesting to distinguish kinds of beliefs that emphasize different ways of believing. Well, I will follow this path. I will argue here that the term belief is ambiguous if there are different ways of believing. But what is a way of believing? Bertrand Russell, in the analysis of mind, made an analysis of belief. There is a chapter there in which he argues that beliefs have three elements, or there are three elements that are relevant to our understanding of what a belief is. First of all, there is the objective element, which is outside the believer, outside the mind of the believer. It is a fact that makes a belief true or false, in his words. But there are also elements that are inside the mind of the believer, and this is the propositional content, the thing that is believed, and the believing. According to Russell, the believing element is a peculiar feeling or sensation associated with the propositional content, with the thing that is believed. And he calls this peculiar feeling or sensation the feeling of belief. This is a term that was also used by Charles Sanders Peirce before Russell, and is a very important notion for Frank Ramsey in Facts and Propositions and other papers. Well, in the chapter dedicated to beliefs, Russell does not elucidate what the feeling of belief is. In fact, many authors that rely on this notion avoid stating exactly what they mean with this notion. But it is important that there in this chapter, Russell argues that different kinds of belief feelings correspond to different ways of believing. So in a sense, this is already a view that endorses the ambiguity of the term belief. In a chapter dedicated to memory, Russell gives us a hint of what he means by feelings of belief. There he claims that it would be something like the feeling of reality, which he describes as, I quote, something akin to respect. It belongs primarily to whatever can do things to us without our voluntary cooperation. It is, in another passage, described as the feeling analogous to respect, which we translate by saying that something is real as opposed to imaginary. Russell's view of beliefs involves the claim that beliefs are distinguished by at least three kinds. And these three kinds of beliefs differ in respect to their feelings of belief. in respect to the feelings of belief that compose them. One of these kinds would be memory or memory beliefs. These are the beliefs involved, the beliefs that involve a felt reference to the past. Katja just spoke about the flavor of pastness. This is the kind of thing that we would find in these beliefs. Russell claims that there are also expectations, and these are beliefs that involve a felt reference to the future, to which we refer with the expression that will happen if we aim to express the beliefs. And there would be also another kind, the bare assent, which involves no temporal determination in the belief feeling, but, well, he claims that this temporal determination could be presented by the content of the belief, the propositional content, which in his view is also in the mind of the believer. Ramsey, in Facts and Propositions, also analyzes beliefs. And it is very interesting that he claims that his analysis works not only for beliefs, but also judgments and assertions. In a sense, he takes all these notions to refer to the same things there in this particular paper. This is not a view that he defends in other works, such as On Truth, the book manuscript that wasn't published in his lifetime. Well, according to Ramsey, beliefs have two kinds of components. There are the objective factors, which are not singular objects, such as facts or true propositions, but multiple elements, a proposition and its constituents. And beliefs are also composed by mental factors, which are things in the mind of the believer. To believe, in his view, is to hold a relation or relations between the two factors. As I said, Ramsey claimed that the term is ambiguous, and this ambiguity has something to do with differences in the mental factors of beliefs. He states that the nature of the mental factors in a belief will depend on the sense in which we are using the ambiguous term belief. Two senses of the term are recognized by him, and the corresponding kinds of belief differ in their mental factors, which are different ways of believing. Ramsey's belief of the first kind can be found not only amongst humans, but also animals. He claims that it is, I quote, for instance, possible to say that a chicken believes a caterpillar to be poisonous, and mean by that merely that it abstains from eating such caterpillars on account of unpleasant experiences connected with them. The mental factors in such a belief would be parts of the chicken's behavior, which are somehow related to the objective factors, viz., the kind of caterpillar and poisonous. What is important for me is that the mental factors of beliefs of the first kind consists of parts of behavior that were established by previous experiences and are somehow related to the belief's objective factors. Ramsey also claims that, I quote, it might well be held that in regard to this kind of belief, the pragmatist view was correct. That is, that the relation between the chicken's behavior and the objective factors was that the actions were such as to be useful if and only if the caterpillars were actually poisonous. Thus, any set of actions for whose utility P is a necessary and sufficient condition might be called a belief that P and so would be true if P, that is, if they, the actions, are useful. This is not only a pragmatist view of beliefs, this is also a pragmatist view about the truth of these beliefs. Once again, what is important for me here is that the set of actions that Ramsey identifies as a belief encompasses the effects of the mental factors of these beliefs. The usefulness of the actions guarantees or consists in the truth of the belief. These set of actions does not include only the actions that are performed, actually performed by the believer, in this case, a chicken, but involves all sorts of actions that would be presented as effects of the mental factors of the belief. This includes the actions that are only possible and would be performed if the circumstances were different. Beliefs of the second kind have different mental factors. Ramsey argues that these mental factors of such beliefs he takes to be words spoken aloud or to oneself or merely imagined, connected together and accompanied by a feeling or feelings of belief or disbelief related to them in a way that I do not propose to discuss. So Ramsey is among those philosophers that avoid elucidating what a feeling of belief or disbelief is. What is important to my talk is that here he recognizes that he's dealing with beliefs that have two kinds of mental factors, which would be consciously considered words and the feeling of belief, or disbelief if you want. But for short, I will just refer to these things as feelings of belief. But he introduces in the paper, in Facts and Propositions, another notion, as I said in the beginning of the talk, which he doesn't claim that it is a third kind of belief. And this is quite interesting. He refers to these elements that are relevant to our cognitive structure as attitudes of believing. And he says that attitudes of believing are expressed by beliefs of the second kind. So when we experience a sentence connected, accompanied by a feeling of belief, this event is an expression of an attitude of believing. I'll quote him. He argues that to say that feeling belief towards a sentence expresses such an attitude of believing is to say that it, the belief of the second kind, has certain causal properties which vary with the attitude. That is, with which possibilities are knocked out and which, so to speak, are still left in. Very roughly, the thinker will act in disregard of the possibilities rejected, but how to explain this accurately, I do not know. Okay, I would like to emphasize three features of the attitudes of believing. First, as Ramsey says, they are expressed by beliefs of the second kind, so they cannot be identified with beliefs of the second kind. Second, they are characterized by sets of possibilities. An attitude of believing retains some truth possibilities of a proposition and rejects the other possibilities. I could offer an example involving attitudes of believing whose objective factors would be simple propositions, but this one that I have chosen involves as the objective factor of attitudes of believing a molecular proposition. I'll read the example. In the case in which we have a feeling of belief that P and Q, this event expresses the attitude of believing that retains the possibilities in which P and Q are true and rejects the possibilities in which P is true and Q is false, P is false and Q is true, as well as the possibility in which P and Q are both false. What is important is that such an attitude of belief makes a cut in the set of all possibilities. It retains some and it rejects others. The third feature of the attitudes of believing is that they are identified by means of causal properties. two beliefs of the second kind with different mental factors will express the same attitude if they have in common many of their causes and many of their effects. This is also something that I take from Ramsey. So these three features they are related to beliefs of the second kind. The attitudes of believing are characterized by a cutout in the set of possibilities. And third, they are identified by means of causal properties. I'll try to propose a thesis that is philosophically relevant and recognizes the ambiguity of the term belief from these views presented by Ramsey. According to Ramsey, there are at least two kinds of beliefs distinguished by their mental factors. The beliefs of the first kind are composed by parts of behavior. The beliefs of the second kind are composed by words consciously considered and the feeling of belief. There are also the attitudes of believing. So my thesis would be that the term belief is ambiguous because there are different ways of believing that are made up of different sorts of mental factors. Besides, there are the attitudes of believing, which are expressed by beliefs of the second kind. This is what we can take from Ramsey's account. There are, of course, other ways of presenting a philosophically relevant thesis of the ambiguity of the term belief. Russell, for instance, argued that the distinction based on feelings of belief would ground a distinction of kinds of beliefs. And I mentioned memory, expectation, and bare assent, but he in fact argues that this list is not exhaustive. There could be other kinds of beliefs that were constituted or actually composed by different feelings of belief. He argues that the feeling of disbelief could play this role. And most recently, Neil van Leeuwen and Tania Lombroso argued in favor of a pluralism of belief, but they did not actually give any substance. They did not actually show in this particular paper how these beliefs differ. Neil van Leeuwen did that in his book Religion as Make-Believe and some forthcoming papers, by stating that there is a distinction between factual beliefs and forms of religious credence. Okay, let's move to the second part, ecumenism about beliefs. There are many theories about the nature of beliefs, and I present here two lists. One was given by H.H. Price in his book Belief. There's a short list. According to him, there would be this major candidates for elucidating what beliefs are: the traditional or current, and the modern or dispositional. A more recent list was given by Schwitzgebel in his entry to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy in the entry Belief, which doesn't include occurrentism as one of these major positions, but he discusses occurrentism in the entry. Well, for me, it's important to deal only with three of these theories: occurrentism, dispositionalism, and representationalism. I will try to show that some general descriptions of these theories suggest that the elements that I pinpointed in the first part of this talk can make true these particular theories. So starting with dispositionalism. This is a characterization that is given in a paper that is still unpublished by Schwitzgebel, dispositionalism yay, representationalism boo. There he argues that the core idea of dispositionalism is this: for a person to believe some disposition P is for their dispositions match to an appropriate degree and in appropriate respects a certain dispositional profile. The dispositional profile characteristic of the belief that P. Well, The mental factors of beliefs of the first kind consists of dispositions for behavior established on the basis of previous experiences. These are the parts of behavior that Ramsay mentioned. In other papers, he just used the term disposition, and curiously, in Facts and Propositions, he avoids it, but we can easily apply the term here. The set of actions that Ramsay identifies as a belief encompasses the effects of activating the dispositions that figure as mental factors of the belief. The usefulness of the actions guarantees or consists, in his view, the truth in the truth of the belief. Well, for occurrentism, I decided to present this characterization, which is not found in these words, in these exact words in Price's book, but we can easily extract this definition from the chapters dedicated to the current analysis. It is the view that beliefs are the mental events of consciously assenting to a proposition. Well, beliefs of the second kind are cases of conscious assent, since their mental factors are words spoken aloud or internally accompanied by, these are words spoken aloud or internally, which are accompanied and united by a feeling of belief. So these kinds of beliefs would make occurrentism at least in part true. I'm emphasizing that it's only partially true, and this is the case with the other two theories, because the theories unfortunately generalize these characterizations to all beliefs, and this is the kind of view that I am not ready to accept. But I would say that some phenomena, some beliefs are occurrent, as well as some beliefs, as we have saw in the two other slides, would be dispositional. Okay. Representationalism is defined by Eric Schwitzgebel in the same paper that I mentioned before, the forthcoming one, as normally, at least in typical or standard cases, the view that when someone believes some proposition P, they have a representation with the content P stored somewhere in the functional architecture of their mind, a representation that plays or stands ready to play a particular functional role. And I claim that what Ramsay describes as attitudes of believing make true, at least in part, representationalism. Attitudes of believing have a representational character, since they are characterized by the retained and rejected truth possibilities of propositions. This is what characterizes them. This cutout in the set of possibilities is intimately related to the attitude's causal properties. As I said, attitudes of believing are identified by means of their causal properties. So this would be enough to claim that attitudes of believing make representationalism to a certain extent true. My ecumenical view, thus, is that sets of beliefs make true, at least in part, the three main theses about the nature of beliefs. Thus, beliefs are dispositional, occurrent, representational. But not all of them are dispositional, not all of them are occurrent, and I wonder if all of them are representational. These are some relations between ways of believing, and this is a more speculative part of the talk, which I would love to discuss with you afterwards. I would argue that occurrent beliefs express representational beliefs. This is stated by Ramsay, in fact. But also that representational beliefs need not be expressed by occurrent beliefs. Some of them could just stay there, inactive in this respect. Occurrent beliefs are experiences that can establish dispositional beliefs. After stating to oneself that one owes $10 to his friend, this person establish a disposition which would manifest afterwards in the occurrent belief that he owes $10 to his friend. And this is stated by the next line. Dispositional beliefs can cause occurrent beliefs, in the sense that occurrent beliefs can be the dispositional effects of dispositional beliefs. Dispositional beliefs are representational. They do cut the set of possibilities as attitudes of believing, but not all representational beliefs are dispositional. In fact, the representational beliefs that are expressed for the first time by means of an occurrent belief, and which later on establish a dispositional belief, cannot be described as being dispositional. Finally, I think that there could be some applications of this ecumenical view to other fields in philosophy and maybe outside philosophy. I'll state now just a few. In the action theory, we may make some use of the ecumenical perspective in trying to understand better the phenomenon of akrasia, of the weakness of will. In metaphysics, this could have some work, or this could be useful in the accounts of the constitution of mind-dependent entities, such as in the social ontology or in the ontology of works of art. But most especially, I think that this can have some applications to epistemology in allowing us to redescribe the distinctions between knowing how and knowing that, and also could play some interesting role in applied epistemology. Well, this is it. I thank you for your attention.